I started working as a security guard about 6 months ago. I took the job to save up for my dream bakery. The place was a huge industrial complex, full of dark warehouses and loading docks. It wasn't a cozy job. I often felt lonely in that sprawling space, especially at night. On my second shift, around midnight, I noticed a door on the lower level was wide open. It should have been locked. I walked over, my heart pounding. I thought it was just a maintenance mistake. As I stepped inside, I heard something. It sounded like footsteps echoing down the hallway. I froze. Maybe it was my imagination. I called out, but nothing answered. I peered into the darkness, but all I saw was more shadows. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I shook it off. The strange sounds kept happening. One night, I heard what sounded like a child's laughter. I was stunned. No kids were around at night in this old building. I figured I was just being paranoid. Each night, I walked the same route, getting more uneasy every time I turned a corner. On my fourth night, I saw odd footprints on the concrete. They were strange, mismatched, leading to rooms that had been abandoned for years. My heart raced as I followed them. I shouldn't have. The lights flickered above me, and I shivered. I glanced down the hall, expecting someone to be there. But it was just empty space. The feeling that I was being watched grew stronger as the weeks went on. I'd often look over my shoulder, feeling something lurking in the shadows, but I found nothing. I wondered if I was going crazy. Was this all in my head? Then one night, on my 8th shift, things took a turn. I passed the lower level again. The same door was ajar. I felt drawn to it. I stepped closer and heard those footsteps again. They were louder this time. Clearer. My heart raced. I almost turned back, but I couldn't. I had to know. Peering down the dim corridor, I could make out a small figure. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered, "Hello?" The response shocked me. A soft, childlike voice echoed back, "Why are you here?" Fear surged through me. I didn't want to be in that hallway anymore. I turned to run, but right then, a flicker of light lit up the corridor. I looked back, but it was empty again. My heart pounded. That voice sounded so real. I was all alone. Or was I? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Each night felt heavier, like the complex was alive in a bad way. That child's laughter still haunted me. I never felt safe again. I went home every morning wanting to forget the shadows that lurked behind me. But I couldn't. I still wonder if I'm really alone in that complex. I cannot ignore what I heard, and I can't stop thinking about that small voice asking, "Why are you here?" I got to work that night and felt a weight on my chest. I couldn't shake off the memory of that child's voice. It lingered, filling my mind with dread. I turned on my flashlight and started my rounds, hoping the routine would calm me down. The complex was quiet. Too quiet. As I walked, I focused on the sounds around me, the creaking of metal, the distant hum of machinery. Each time a sound echoed, I jumped. I reached the rear loading dock, the furthest point from the office. An uneasy knot twisted in my stomach. That's when I saw it. A shadow darted across the far side of the dock. It was small and quick. I froze, my heart racing. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice echoing. The only response was silence. I strained to see but found nothing. I took a cautious step forward, but then my flashlight flickered. I quickly tapped the flashlight, and it came back on, nearly blinding me. I scanned the area again, my pulse hammering in my ears. All I saw were abandoned crates and deep shadows. Nothing moved. Maybe I was imagining it again. I shook my head and kept walking, but the feeling of eyes on me rushed back. It was as if someone was watching from the shadows. I recalled the child's laughter. Why was this happening? I didn't want to go back to that dark corridor, but I felt drawn to it. Something urged me to investigate further. I took a deep breath and decided to head back down to the lower level. As I approached the hallway, the door was slightly open again, like it was inviting me. I hesitated but pushed it open. The corridor was darker than before. I pointed my flashlight down the hall, and the beam illuminated more of those odd footprints leading deeper into the darkness. They were clearer now, almost inviting me to follow. I had to know where they went. With each step, my anxiety grew, but I pressed on. I rounded the first corner, and the air felt colder. The footsteps abruptly stopped. "Hello?" I called out. Silence responded. I took another step, and then I heard it again. Childlike laughter, drifting from the end of the hall. My blood ran cold. Suddenly the lights flickered violently, and I felt the ground quake beneath my feet. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. "This isn't funny!" I shouted, hoping whoever was there would show themselves. In that moment, a door slammed shut somewhere behind me. I whirled around, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. There was no way anyone could have passed me without my notice. Panic surged within me. It felt like the walls were closing in, and I had to escape. I bolted back down the corridor, racing toward the exit. My mind screamed at me to get out. As I crossed the threshold into the stairwell, I glanced back one last time. And that's when I saw it, a small handprint smudged on the wall where the light didn't reach. I stumbled backward, colliding with the railing. My breath hitched as I took in the handprint, too small to belong to an adult. I turned and fled, feeling a sickening combination of fear and urgency. I had to leave this place, but I knew somehow this was far from over. I burst through the exit door into the night, desperate for fresh air. I leaned against the cool metal railing, gulping in the chill that cut through the muggy evening. My heart was still racing, and my mind replayed the events like a broken record. The laughter, the footprints, the handprint, it all felt too surreal. I took a moment to collect myself, forcing my breathing to slow down. I needed to be rational. Maybe it was a prank, perhaps one of the late-night workers looking for attention. But the handprint, that felt different. It haunted me, embedding itself in my thoughts like a splinter. I decided to call my coworker, Jamie. She was the only one I trusted enough to talk about this. "Hey, Jamie," I said when she picked up, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you come by the complex? Something weird is happening." "What's going on?" she asked, concern edging her tone. "I don't know how to explain it. Just, please. I need someone with me." Her hesitation was palpable. "Okay. I'll be there in 20. I glanced back at the building, its presence looming ominously. I couldn't shake the feeling of something lingering in the shadows, waiting. I walked a few steps away from the entrance, trying to calm my nerves. As I stood there, I heard another sound. So faint I almost missed it. A gentle tapping, rhythmic and haunting, echoed from the direction of the loading dock. My stomach turned again, unease clawing at me. I didn't want to go back inside, but the sound was familiar. It was almost like the way a child might knock, a repetitive insistence. I couldn't ignore it. I crept slowly back toward the dock, my flashlight switching on with a flick. The light felt weaker now, as if it knew the heaviness of the moment. I hesitated outside the door before pushing it open. The dock was quiet, but the tapping had stopped. I stepped forward, scanning the area where I had seen the shadow before. Shadows danced around the abandoned crates. I felt like a fool for even being drawn back, but curiosity gnawed at me. That's when I noticed something on the ground, a small object half hidden beneath a crate. I knelt down, pushing aside some debris, and pulled it out. It was a well-worn teddy bear, its fur matted and eyes dull. My heart sank. Why was this here? It didn't belong to me, and it certainly didn't belong to anyone working the night shift. A chilly breeze swept through the dock, causing my flashlight to flicker again. I glanced up and saw the door to the lower corridor swinging open. I didn't remember leaving it that way. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Jamie saying she had arrived. But the moment I looked up again, standing in the doorway was a small figure, too dark to make out clearly. I blinked, and the figure vanished. All the rational thoughts I had fled me. I dropped the teddy bear and ran back to the exit. Fear propelled me forward, but as I hit the final threshold, the air grew thick. I turned to see the door slam shut, leaving me in the beckoning night. The teddy bear lay abandoned on the ground, but I couldn't go back for it. A chilling realization settled in. Whatever was inside that complex was not finished with me yet. As I stepped into the parking lot, the shadows seemed to follow. I had escaped for now, but I knew it was only a matter of time before the night brought me back. The moon hung high, casting an eerie glow over the parking lot as I paced. I couldn't settle. My thoughts raced faster than my feet. I needed to get away, but I couldn't shake the feeling of something watching me. Jamie pulled up, headlights slicing through the darkness. I rushed over, desperate for her presence. She stepped out, concern filling her eyes. "You look pale. What happened?" I swallowed hard, glancing back at the building. "I don't even know how to explain it," I said, running a hand through my hair. "Can we just go inside?" She hesitated but nodded, following me to the entrance. The lobby was still and cold under the fluorescent lights. I led her to the loading dock, my heart pounding with each step, anxiety bubbling in my stomach. As we reached the door, Jamie paused. "Are you sure this is where you heard the knocking?" I nodded, pushing open the door. The dock looked just as I had left it, but the teddy bear was gone. I felt my heart drop again. "It was right there," I murmured, scanning the area frantically. "I found a teddy bear." "What kind of teddy bear?" she asked, trying to keep calm. "A dirty one, like a child's, but I don't think it belonged to anyone from here." Jamie frowned, biting her lip. "Do you really think it was a prank?" "Maybe." I cut her off. "No, it's not just that. I saw something. A figure." Her brow furrowed. "A figure? What do you mean?" "Just a shadow in the doorway," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And then it disappeared." "All right, let's check it out," she said, moving further into the room. I followed behind, resisting the urge to grab her arm and pull her back. As we ventured deeper, a sudden chill swept through the dock, making me shiver. Jamie must have felt it too. She looked at me, her face pale. "Did you feel that?" Before I could respond, a crash echoed from the far end of the dock. We both stiffened, staring toward the noise, breaths held tight. Another crash, the sound of metal hitting the ground. It came again. "Stay behind me," Jamie whispered, edging toward the source of the sound. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but her determination anchored me in place. We crept forward, and I caught sight of something moving in the shadows. "Jamie," I hissed. But the words barely left my mouth before the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight. It flickered to life just in time for me to see a small handprint emerge on the nearby wall. Impossibly small, fingers splayed wide. My throat tightened. "That wasn't there before," I said, a tremor in my voice. Suddenly Jamie gasped, pointing into the void. "Look!" I followed her gaze and felt a wave of nausea hit. Standing in the shadows, framed by the doorway, was the silhouette of a small figure. Before I could even react, it started moving toward us, slow and deliberate. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted toward the exit. As we burst out into the parking lot, I turned back, panting. The figure lingered in the doorway, watching. Then, without warning, it vanished into the darkness. "What was that?" Jamie asked, her voice shaking. I didn't have an answer. Whatever it was seemed to know us, and I realized then that I couldn't return to this place without knowing the truth. The night wasn't done with us yet, and I feared the questions were only beginning. The next day, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the events from the loading dock. I couldn't shake the image of that small figure, and every creak of my house felt like the whisper of a ghost. Deciding I needed answers, I called Jamie. "Can we meet up?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at me. "Sure," she said. "Where?" "How about the diner?" I needed somewhere public, somewhere bright. The thought of being alone with my thoughts was too unsettling. When I arrived at the diner, the smell of coffee and frying bacon hit me, but it felt muted against the weight of my anxiety. Jamie was already seated in a booth, her brows drawn together in thought. "Did you come up with anything?" she asked, looking up expectantly as I slid into the seat across from her. I shook my head. "No, but I need to know what we saw last night. I can't just forget about it." She nodded, her expression serious. "I get that. But where do we even start?" "Maybe the old records," I suggested. "If there's been anything strange reported around the building before?" With a determined look, she agreed. "Let's go visit that archive center. If there's history there, we'll find it." After finishing our coffee, we headed for the main office building. It felt ominous again, like an old friend you couldn't trust. As we entered, the faint smell of musty paper filled the air. We approached the front desk, and an older woman welcomed us. "We're looking for any records or reports about unusual activity," Jamie said, her voice steady. The woman raised an eyebrow and nodded slowly. "You mean like hauntings? More like—" "We had a weird experience last night," I stammered, "and we're curious." She studied us for a moment, then nodded. "There are old reports from years ago. Sometimes children went missing from the area. I can pull those for you." "Missing kids?" My stomach dropped. My nerves tightened, fearing the connection between those stories and what we had seen. As she walked away, Jamie whispered, "What if that's somehow connected to last night? The figure? Was it a lost child?" I didn't want to think about that. "Let's just find out what we can first." She nodded, but I could tell she was just as worried as I was. When the woman returned, she handed us a dusty folder. "Here you go. Be careful with it. It hasn't been opened in a long time." As I flipped through the pages, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Reports from the past detailed strange sightings, kids who vanished without a trace, and countless odd occurrences. But one particular page captured my attention. It mentioned a teddy bear found near one of the children's last known locations. "That's just like the one from last night," I said, my breath quickening. "Do you think—" Jamie began but stopped short. Just then, we heard a loud thump from the back of the building. The sound echoed through the still air office. "Maybe we should check that out," I suggested, my heart racing. But as we stood there, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a small shadow darting across the far wall. "What was that?" Jamie gasped, her eyes wide. I felt the blood drain from my face as I turned toward the shadow, my heart hammering in my chest. "Let's go," I said, trying to steady my voice, but the urge to investigate clawed at me. We stepped cautiously towards the source of the sound, a strange sense of dread flooding me. Before we could get too close, the lights flickered and went out, leaving us in darkness once more. "Stay close," I whispered, our breaths rattling through the silence. And then I heard a giggle, faint, yet clear, slicing through the air. "Did you hear that?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. "Yes," Jamie replied, her voice trembling. "What do we do?" I opened my mouth, but no answer came. Instead, I felt a rush of icy air, and suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us. The door slammed with a finality that sent a jolt of fear through my entire body. "We're trapped," I whispered, staring at the darkened doorway. "We can't just stand here," Jamie said, her voice shaking. "We have to find a way out." I looked around, my heart racing. The room was pitch black. My fingers brushed against the desk beside me, feeling for something, anything that could help us. What if whatever's in here with us doesn't want us to leave? "We can't think like that," she snapped. But I could hear the tremor in her voice. We heard the giggle again, this time closer. It echoed in the small space, wrapping around us, chilling my blood. "Is someone there?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. There was no reply, just that unsettling laughter. I took a shaky step toward the sound, my instincts clawing at me to run the other way. Jamie grabbed my arm. "Wait! Let's just find the way back to the front." She was right, we needed to move, to get back to the hallway and out of this room. "Okay, let's go," I said, trying to muster some confidence. Together we made our way back toward where we thought the exit was. Every shuffling sound seemed magnified, like unseen eyes were watching our every move. The air felt thick and suffocating, almost as if it had weight. Just as we reached the doorway, the lights flickered back to life, blinding us momentarily. But the relief was short-lived. Standing in the doorway was a small figure, hardly visible, but unmistakably a child dressed in pale clothing. My breath caught. "Who are you?" I stuttered. The figure didn't respond, but pointed down the hall, toward the dark end. I glanced at Jamie, who looked as frightened as I felt. "Do we follow it?" she whispered, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "I don't think we have much choice," I said, feeling an odd pull toward the child. It felt wrong, but the curiosity burned within me. We ventured down the hallway, the floor creaking beneath our feet. The farther we walked, the colder the air became. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to chase away the chill. As we got closer, the child turned and started to skip forward, glancing back occasionally as if inviting us to play. I wanted to turn back, but something about the child's laughter drew me in. Finally, we reached the end of the hall. The child stopped and turned to face us. "I want my bear." The voice was high-pitched, almost sing-song, echoing through the empty space. My stomach dropped. "What bear?" I asked, wishing I could take the question back. The child's expression darkened, the innocence vanishing. "The one you found," it said, pointing accusingly at me. Panic surged through me again. I took a step back, but Jamie didn't move. "What does that mean?" she asked, voice now a barely audible whisper. Before I could answer, I felt that icy rush of air again, and suddenly the child was gone, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. "Did that just happen?" I whispered, hoping Jamie would offer me some semblance of sanity. But as I turned to her, I saw her face pale with fear, her eyes wide. "We need to leave. Right now." "Yeah," I said, although my legs felt rooted to the ground. Something was very wrong, and the unease swirling in my gut threatened to overwhelm me. As we started retreating back down the hallway, the lights flickered again, and then I heard it. A faint sound, the rattle of a ball rolling behind us. My heart plunged. I knew we weren't alone. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins as we sprinted toward the exit, not daring to look back. Then I heard the laughter again, growing louder, echoing down the hall, like a dark promise chasing us into the unknown. We darted down the hallway, our feet pounding against the floor. The laughter grew closer, a haunting melody that sent chills skittering up my spine. It felt like something was gaining on us, and I pushed myself to run faster, but I couldn't tell if it was my imagination or something lurking in the dark. "Where do we go?" Jamie yelled, panic seeping into her voice. "I don't know, just keep moving," I replied, my mind racing. I had to stay calm, I had to think, but the fear twisted around my thoughts, making it hard to focus. The hallway seemed to stretch on indefinitely, every turn looking the same. Then, just ahead of us, I saw a door slightly ajar. "There!" I shouted, pointing. "We can hide!" We raced toward it, the sound of our footsteps echoing like a pulse in the stillness. As we reached the door, I pushed it open with my shoulder. The room inside was dark, but at least not completely empty. I could make out shelves filled with old boxes and dust-covered furniture. "Get in!" I urged Jamie, shoving her ahead of me before slipping inside. I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. We rushed to the back of the room and pressed ourselves against the wall, hearts thumping in unison. "Do you think it's gone?" Jamie asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," I whispered, trying to listen over the sound of my raging pulse. The laughter faded, but only slightly. Then I noticed it. There was something moving in the corner of the room. "Shh," I whispered, clutching Jamie's arm. We both turned our heads and strained to see. A shadow seemed to dance at the edge of the faint light filtering through the cracks. "Is it coming back?" Jamie squeaked, her breath hitching in her throat. "I don't know," I said again, feeling the weight of dread settle on my chest. Just then, the shadow coalesced into something more defined, a toy bear, lying forgotten among the debris. It looked worn, its button eyes glinting in the dimness. I felt an icy claw of dread grab my heart. This is what the child wanted, I thought, the realization zapping my mind. "It's the bear." Jamie inched closer, hand trembling. "Should we take it?" I shook my head vehemently. "No, we can't. What if it's cursed or something?" But before I could react further, a loud crash startled us both. The door burst open with a force that threw me to the ground, and silhouetted in the doorway stood the child, eyes wide and eerie. "I want my bear!" it shrieked, the sing-song voice now twisted with rage. The laughter returned, echoing off the walls, a cacophony of pure malice. In that moment, I was frozen in place, my mind trying to comprehend the madness unfolding. Panic surged again, and I scrambled back, desperately seeking a way out. "Jamie, we have to move!" I screamed, but she was already moving, backing towards the shelves. I could see the horror written on her face as the child stepped inside, darkening the room with its presence. Then everything went dark. Without thinking, I lunged for the door behind me, plunging into the hallway. My heart pounded, but there was no laughter anymore, just the echo of my own fear ringing back at me. I glanced back to see if Jamie was following. Her eyes met mine, wide with terror. "The bear! Where is it?" And then I froze. I couldn't remember if we had left it behind or not. I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. Suddenly, I realized that maybe we weren't just running from the child. Perhaps it was after something deeper, something we had unknowingly brought into this nightmare. I turned again, facing the darker end of the hallway, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. I stood in the hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. The darkness at the far end loomed like a thick curtain, and every instinct screamed for me to run. I thought about Jamie. She was somewhere behind me, stuck in that room with the child. Panic clawed at my insides, but I couldn't give in. "Jamie!" I called out, my voice shaky. Nothing but silence answered. I felt the walls closing in around me. I took a cautious step forward, double-checking over my shoulder. I had to find her. I needed to know she was okay. My heart sank deeper when I remembered the bear. That toy could be the key to this whole nightmare, or it could seal our fates. Without another thought, I moved quietly down the hall, keeping close to the wall. I strained to listen for any sounds. Was the child still in the room? Or had it followed us? As I approached the next door, I noticed a flickering light underneath it. A part of me hoped it was Jamie. The other part screamed at me to turn back. I hesitated but couldn't leave her alone like this. I reached for the handle and slowly turned it. The door creaked open. Inside, I squinted against the sudden burst of light. The room was filled with mismatched furniture and remnants of forgotten lives. In the corner, a dim bulb flickered to life, illuminating dust motes swirling through the air. "Jamie?" I whispered, stepping inside. Still no response. I moved further in, my heart pounding. The walls were lined with framed pictures, faces staring back at me, eyes wide and haunting. It felt like they were watching my every move. I shuffled past a broken chair, and something crunched beneath my foot. I looked down to see shards of glass spread across the floor, a shattered frame. My hand instinctively went to my mouth, stifling a gasp. "What is happening here?" I muttered. That's when I saw it again. The bear. It was sitting on a table, untouched. My stomach twisted. How had it gotten here? I hurried over to it, my fingers brushing against its worn fur. It looked harmless, but I could feel a wrongness radiating from it. "Come on, Jamie, where are you?" I said, keeping my voice steady despite the encroaching dread. Then the laughter returned, faint at first, then growing louder like a wave crashing over me. I turned toward the sound, heart racing, but the source was shrouded in darkness. I squinted, trying to discern shapes. Shadows began darting along the edges, too quick to catch. "Get out!" I screamed, panic spilling over. The door behind me slammed shut. I was trapped. I ran to the door and pounded on it, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows converged, growing larger and more ominous. I felt their desperation, an overwhelming urge to flee mixed with a paralyzing fear. The walls seemed to close in, and the laughter twisted, echoing my own rising panic. Then, out of nowhere, a voice cut through the chaos. "You took my bear!" I whipped around, and standing there was the child. Not as I had seen it before. Its form flickered ungainly, shifting between innocence and monstrous rage. "I want it back!" they screamed, and then everything shattered into darkness once more, leaving me breathless and lost. The world spun, and I fought to hold on to the last vestiges of reality. The child was close. I could feel it, and it wanted something from me. Gripping the table, my fingers clenched around the bear. Someone was in the house, and I was about to discover what that meant. I blinked against the darkness, struggling to catch my breath. The whispers of the shadows began swirling around me again, wrapping tighter than before. The bear felt heavy in my hands, as if it held more than just its stuffed form. I couldn't just stand there, trapped in this unknown. I had to fight back. Taking a deep breath, I glanced around the room for an escape. My eyes darted from the table to the walls, desperate for some sign of a way out. The pulse of the shadows drew near, and I felt the child's presence looming like a thundercloud about to burst. I had the bear. Maybe that could give me an advantage. "Listen," I said, my voice wavering but firm. "It's yours. I'm not here to take anything from you." The laughter stopped. A tense silence filled the air. I decided to push forward, even though fear gripped my throat. "You can have your bear back. Just let me and Jamie go. She didn't do anything wrong." The child stepped closer, the flicker of their form coalescing into a more defined shape. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, voice a chilling mixture of childlike glee and something darker. "No one ever leaves." I took a cautious step back, heart racing as it loomed closer. "No one?" The weight of its words felt like a stone dropped into a still lake, sending ripples through my mind. "What do you mean?" The child grinned, an eerie smile that didn't quite fit its face. "They all wanted to play. They wanted my bear too." Behind it, shadows swirled like a storm, and I could make out figures forming within. I felt bile rise in my throat as ghostly shapes took form. People, their eyes wide with fear, mouths opened in silent screams. I stumbled back, but the door loomed too far away. What happened to them? I tightened my grip on the bear, hoping it would somehow shield me from the threat that surrounded me. "Trapped," the child whispered. "Like you will be." Suddenly, the dim light overhead flickered more violently, casting sharp shadows that danced along the walls. I felt dizzy, the laughter returning in chorus, echoing in a twisted symphony around me. I had to get out, but how? There was no window, no exit. Just as the waves of darkness seemed ready to engulf me, the bear pulsed in my hand, warm and full of life. I didn't understand how, but instinctively, I shouted, "This bear belongs to you. Take it!" The child's eyes widened, curious yet suspicious. "You want to give it to me?" "Of course!" I felt desperate, and I wasn't sure where the courage came from, but I threw the bear towards the child. "Just let us go!" For a split second, the room fell quiet. The shadows hesitated, swirling as if caught in a sudden gust of wind. But then, there was a rustling, and the laughter returned, louder than ever. The child darted forward and snatched the bear from midair. Its grin widened, teeth glinting in the flickering light. "Now you are part of the game," it declared, the last echoes of laughter ringing like the toll of a bell. The weight of dread slammed into my chest. The darkness surged, and I knew. I had just made my worst mistake. Then the world around me began to fracture, and everything went black again, dragging me into a deeper nightmare. I awoke in a haze, my body heavy and disoriented. Blinding lights bore down on me, and for a moment, I thought I was in the hospital. But as clarity returned, I realized I was back at the complex. I lay on the cold concrete of the loading dock, the eerie stillness cloaking me like a shroud. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows around me rippled as if alive. I pushed myself up, my heart pounding in my chest. My hands trembled, but I scrambled to my feet, scanning the area frantically for Jamie. "Jamie!" I shouted, my voice sounding small and lost in the vast emptiness. No answer. I took a hesitant step forward, my flashlight flickering to life in my shaking grip. I swung the beam around, desperately looking for any sign of her. The dim light revealed the familiar contours of the dock, the same worn crates and shadows I'd evaded just a short while before. Everything felt eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. "Where are you?" I muttered under my breath, moving cautiously toward the door leading back into the complex. I could feel a weight pressing down on me, a lingering dread that something was very wrong. With a deep breath, I pushed through the door. Inside, the corridor was emptier than I remembered, the air cooler and heavier. I could almost taste the darkness. I called out again, "Jamie?" The tension thickened, and I felt the weight of the walls pressing in around me. This place felt different now, like it was watching. I hesitated, the memory of the child flickering in my mind. What had I set into motion? Just as I turned back, I heard something, a faint giggle echoing from deep within the corridor. I froze, recognizing the sound that had haunted my nights. I knew I shouldn't follow it, but an inexplicable compulsion gripped me, urging me forward. As I stepped down the hallway, shadows danced just outside the beam of my flashlight. The deeper I went, the more that cold dread twisted in my gut. Suddenly, I came upon a familiar door, the one from the loading dock that led into the darkened room with the forgotten memories. It was ajar, light spilling out like a beacon. I stepped closer, hesitating before pushing it open. Inside, Jamie was sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers and photographs. Her eyes were wide with panic, but there was also something else there, an understanding. "You found it," she said, her voice trembling. "What?" I glanced around, trying to process her words. Then I spotted a beaten-up teddy bear lying beside her, the very one we had seen in our earlier nightmares. "Why did you take it?" I whispered, fear creeping back to life. Jamie shook her head, confusion marring her features. "I didn't take it. I don't know how it got here. I just found it sitting right there," she said, pointing. "Where are we?" The question felt futile. I wanted to scream, to shatter the illusion of calm settling in this bizarre moment. But without warning, the air grew thick, turning suffocating. The lights above flickered, and I felt the shadows shifting, rising up as if alive. The child's giggle returned, echoing around us, sending icy fingers crawling up my spine. "Get ready," I said to Jamie, my heart racing as I grabbed her arm. "We need to get out of here now." We scrambled to our feet and rushed toward the door. The moment I pushed it open, a force slammed against me, sending me sprawling back. The shadows seemed to laugh, swarming into the room, swirling closer with every breath. "Don't look back!" I shouted, pulling Jamie along as we dashed toward the exit. We ran with all our strength, the shadows snapping at our heels, loud laughter filling the air. But with every step, a strange resolve unfurled within me. Outside, the moonlight felt surreal, almost unreal in comparison to the darkness lurking within. We burst into the parking lot, gasping for breath, the cool evening air slapping against our faces. I looked back, half expecting to see the child watching us from the doorway. But the complex stood silent. The shadows had receded, and there was no trace of the laughter or the figures we had seen. Just stillness, settled like thick fog. "Did we make it?" Jamie murmured, her eyes searching the darkened complex. But I couldn't answer her right away. I was left with an unsettling feeling in my gut that told me it wasn't truly over. "I don't think so," I said, gazing back at the darkened building, a knot of unease forming deep inside me. As we walked toward the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever presence had haunted those halls was still there, waiting, watching. And I still didn't have the answers I desperately sought. Driving away, I turned to Jamie, desperate for reassurance. "We'll figure this out," I said, though uncertainty gnawed at my words. She nodded, but both our minds were plagued by lingering questions, their answers snatched away by shadows. Sometimes I still think of that complex, and the child looking for its bear, the haunting laughter echoing in my mind like a forgotten song. Although I broke free from its grasp, the truth of what happened that night remained elusive, buried under the weight of darkness, perhaps never to fully surface.